behavior. They are playing in the ground, they are directly confronted with waste, they are directly confronted with chemicals, and therefore children are the main victims of environment problems. They are, cynically enough, the early warning persons.
Before the children were vomiting, they had diarrhea, coughs, and they were tired as if they had asthma. The doctor told me it was from the smoke.
We need to focus for the Johannesburg summit so that the basic links between child health and environment really are brought forward and helps us move ahead in the coming years to invest more in children and the environment.
Eight-year-old Jose has been put on a respirator to save his life. He's one of hundreds of children in Nicaragua admitted to hospital every week with acute respiratory problems. Jaime is 18 months old. He hasn't been able to breathe unassisted since he was born. In Nicaragua, acute respiratory illness is the second biggest killer of children after diarrhea. Worldwide, 14,000 children die from respiratory diseases every day.
Recently, we have realized that children who are exposed to a variety of toxic fumes for a long period of time suffer from long-term respiratory diseases. The most significant one is chronic bronchitis. Then there is asthma.
The single biggest cause of respiratory illnesses in children is indoor air pollution, generated by open fires or stoves used for cooking and heating. In cramped homes like this, children just can't avoid breathing in the toxic fumes from the smoke all around them. The World Health Organization estimates that every year 2.7 million children die from inhaling smoke from open fires in confined spaces. Indoor air pollution and the damage it does to children's health is one of the worldwide issues leaders will address when they gather at the World Summit on Sustainable Development in Johannesburg, 10 years after the Rio Earth Summit was meant to have led to improved conditions for children's health. Instead, children today have become the first victims of degraded environments everywhere. 20% of children won't live to see their 5th birthday, mostly because of environment-related diseases. Poor housing and sanitation, dirty water, traffic accidents, drowning, burns, poisoning, and air pollution are all taking their toll. And while environmental degradation is a worldwide phenomenon, children in developing countries are 13 times more likely to die before they're 5 than their peers in industrialized countries. The tragedy is that most environmentally related diseases are preventable.
Children are not little adults. They grow, they develop very, very fast at certain age. You know, the newborn, the child, the adolescent, they're always growing. And environmental pollutants or physical agents may have an impact on their organs and systems which are developing.
Of the disease burden caused by environmental factors, the children carry 40% of that. So almost half of all environmental diseases fall upon small children. But this is over-proportionate because they're only 12% of the total population. So that relatively small group of people carries a heavy, heavy weight of environmental diseases.
Over the last 10 years, the world's population has grown by over 1 billion. That's 15,000 babies born every hour. With the biggest population of any single nation, 1.3 billion mouths to feed, China has been undergoing an industrial revolution. One outcome: increased stress on both the environment and on children's health.
Industrial development is going up rapidly in China. China is in the transition stage where the environmental safety, industrial safety regulations is not fully developed or enforced, so many sloppy practice probably is present. And also, meanwhile, the number of cars and vehicles is also rapidly increasing in many cities. Any lead present in the environment is harmful, and particularly harmful to young children. And we also know the younger they are, the greater the impact of lead poisoning or exposure to lead, because lead, it turned out to be one of those compounds that can damage the nerve system, the brain. So it basically undermines the development of the child, makes the child less capable, less smart.
One of the best examples where governments should move is leaded gasoline. We know that lead has to be removed from the gasoline, and up to now 58 countries have done it. By the year 2005, 71 countries will have unleaded gasoline.
Pollution from lead is a worldwide problem, both north and south, with over 2 million extra cars on the roads every year. In China, up to 90% of children living in industrial and heavy traffic areas are already suffering from lead poisoning. But while the numbers migrating to China's overcrowded cities continue to soar, most Chinese families still live in rural areas. Here, the risk to children's health is from an excess of natural chemicals in water, a problem exacerbated by ignorance and widespread poverty. Liu Mingbi is 14 years old, but she's the same size as her 2-year-old brother. She's one of millions of Chinese who live in high fluoride environments. Fluorosis, or fluoride poisoning, is a condition caused by drinking groundwater containing high concentrations of fluoride or by breathing in smoke from fluoride-laden coal.
Excessive exposure to fluoride, it's mainly a long-term effect. It weakens the bone. So when a person grew up, the weaker bones more likely to become fractured, more likely to develop joint problems. And the most visible impact, which actually is very bothersome to both children and adults, is developing the discolorations and the spots on the teeth. There are millions of people living in we call the fluoride affected part, and they don't have a ready alternative. The alternative is to find different water supply or to dig a deeper well, which is an expensive proposition.
Millions of children around the world remain at risk from fluoride poisoning because lack of access to alternative water supplies is exacerbated by extreme poverty. Rural poverty is driving more and more people to seek work in cities. This increases the strains on existing resources, but also creates new, often more dangerous hazards to children's health as a result of inadequate and overcrowded slum housing and lack of clean water and proper sanitation.
Poverty is indeed the root cause of most of the challenges for children, although one looks at wars and HIV/AIDS as also adding to these challenges. Access to clean water is very much an issue of the poor. There has been improvement over the last decade. More people have access to clean water than before, but that has not been matched by access to decent sanitation. And without the two coming together, it makes very little difference.
Unclean water is still today a fact of life in the developing countries. They do not have sewage treatment plants like we have. They don't have the excreta, the wastewater is just discharged into the environment, and they don't have the safeguards we have here. They don't have water supply systems which are chlorinated 24 hours a day. They don't have that. So what they get as water from the environment is doubtful.
8-month-old Margaret has been rushed into a makeshift hospital in Zambia with cholera. In Africa, nearly 2 million people die each year from preventable water-related diseases like cholera and malaria. The main source of water contamination in developing countries is human feces, as a result of the failure to provide adequate sanitation. 2.4 billion people today don't have access to even a simple latrine, so many of the rivers and lakes from which people collect their everyday drinking water are heavily polluted with human waste. There are solutions, though. Across Africa, these water stations are helping children like Margaret by providing clean drinking water to the local community and reducing the amount of time children, mainly girls, have to spend looking for clean water. And yet, not everyone is reaping the benefits. Worldwide, 2 million children a year still die from deadly diarrheal diseases. In poor environments like these, another problem is that children's natural curiosity makes them particularly vulnerable to injuries, to burns from fires, drowning, serious injuries from falls, hot water, or electrical power lines. From accidental poisoning, exposure to toxic products, mercury and other toxins on waste sites and in the home.
We admit about 200 children a year in this ward with acute poisonings. This is the ward where they are usually admitted and treated.
Dr. Gerbus Muller works in this poison centre in Cape Town, South Africa, treating the victims of accidental chemical poisoning. He's seen the number of child patients he treats at the centre steadily growing each year.
Ingestion of paraffin and related volatile substances like petrol, or that is now gasoline, were the most important cause of acute poisoning in children. Now these substances also include turpentine, for instance, thinners, all these volatile agents used in and around the home. Children are very inquisitive, and people tend to put these substances into cool drink bottles, and then children get hold of them and they drink it and think it's perhaps water or cool drink, and this then can cause quite severe poisonings.
The Poison Centre also provides information about hazardous chemicals, often through links with other groups.
There's a Paraffin Safety Association in South Africa, and they're very active in preventing and campaigning exposures to volatile substances like paraffin, and they play a very major role in educating the public.
I found out that children are being sent to buy pesticide because in some instances you'll find out that parents cannot even read or write, so they find themselves in a position where they send children to go buy this pesticide, to read the pesticides to them. But if we can also educate the children, to educate their parents on how the hazards that are related with these chemicals.
Exposures to potentially dangerous substances is really a worldwide problem. Where there's lots of agricultural activity, where there's lots of industrialization, you have a bigger problem.
Children are especially vulnerable to exposure to dangerous chemicals and to breathing in toxins. Industries like this cement factory in South Africa, where workers are exposed to fine dust particles, can cause silicosis, a condition which favors tuberculosis and lung cancer. There are up to 100,000 synthetic chemicals in commercial production around the world. Many have not been researched for their effects on human health and may interfere with the growth and development of children, especially if children are working in an environment which uses these chemicals. Worldwide, poverty forces millions of children into work to help their families survive. In Cambodia, it's estimated that over 300,000 children below the age of 14 work. Many children work in dangerous environments. In industries which exploit child labor, like this brickmaking factory, children work long hours for minimal pay and are often exposed to dangerous and physically damaging conditions. Ritti is 6. He was born in this brickmaking factory. His mother and 7 brothers and sisters all live and work here. Ritti's mother, Samet, used to be a farmer. She had her own house and her own land. 8 years ago, she got into debt after her eldest son caught malaria. She borrowed money from the factory owner to pay for medicine to treat him. And now her whole family has to work at the factory to pay off the money.
I don't know how long we'll be here for. If I don't save any money, we will have to keep working. It seems as if there is never an end. We pay the debt, but there never seems to be anything left, and so we continue to work.
It's a vicious circle. Even though the whole family is working full-time, they can never make enough money to stay alive and pay off the debt, and so have to borrow yet more. The children don't go to school and are often ill. "84 million children work in dangerous environments. Over 250 million children between the ages of 5 and 14 are employed worldwide." But in spite of all the failures, there has been progress in efforts to improve children's health and safety in many countries. In Central America, scientists have been researching ways to cut down on indoor air pollution. Working with colleagues from throughout the region, Rogerio de Miranda aims to improve on traditional ways of cooking and heating. Here in Nicaragua, women at home are helping his organization, Prolena, with their research to measure exactly how much air pollution is emitted by their stoves. The bags that they hang up over the stoves and the packs they wear whilst they're cooking are full of equipment which measures the pollution levels at home.
The smoke problems mainly create a respiratory infection among women and children, because the children stay with the woman at home and they stay around the kitchen. So indeed, when I go to woman, visit the woman, and I tell her, as black as you see your roof, as black as your lungs. So I think it's about time that we can invest in a little bit more money and to study and to get more clear evidence of the effect of this, and see how can we make interventions to eliminate people exposure.
Today, Rogerio's visiting Maria Elena in the capital of Nicaragua, Managua. Her daughter Cristina was seriously ill in hospital last year with smoke-induced asthma. Rogerio's keen to find out how she's doing and also to see how things have changed at home with the installation of a new energy-efficient cooking stove which channels all the smoke outside the house. He wants to see if cutting back on the smoke has helped. There are some very simple and cost-effective solutions to the threats that environmental hazards like indoor air pollution pose to children's health.
And definitely, since there is no smoke, the children are much healthier. The doctor asked me if there was a fire in their house, if there was any smoke, and then he told me that the children had problems because of the smoke, from the smoke and the dust. Once the smoke was still around, he said, they wouldn't get better.
The new stove has another benefit too.
So she went to the agency and asked for a loan to buy the stove, and that was about 3 years ago. And in her case is special because the stove, besides improving the health of the family, helped her to reduce her expenditure in firewood. About $1 that she save a day and not buying firewood with the savings can help her to buy more food or clothes for the children.
Maria Elena's stove hasn't just saved on fuel costs, it's also given her a new source of income. She now has a small business selling tortillas.
It's definitely made a huge difference to my life. I can feed my children, I can pay for clean water, I pay for electricity, I buy them shoes and clothes, everything that they need now that they go to school. I'm not rich, but now at least we have enough to eat and drink, thank God.
Now Cristina's well again, she helps her mother by selling tortillas on the streets of Managua. Tortilla! She does a daily round in the neighborhood each morning before going to school. Tortilla! And the money she makes helps pay for her education.
In the future, God willing, I want my children to have a better life than me. I want them to study hard, so that one day they become someone useful to society.
I think the Johannesburg Summit can help the world's poorest kids, or help kids generally, by emphasizing the sustainability element. If you're really looking for something that will give you long-term returns, and you can see it in a relatively short term, then if you invest in children, you are helping to create a society where you will both have consumers and workers, a society where hopefully we will reduce the number of people who die before the age of 5, a society that will be healthier, a society that will be able to produce new leaders.
We must open the eyes of the people in the so-called developed countries that we need a solidarity of cooperation, that we need financial cooperation, that we need also the backing in developing countries, in big cities, in these huge urban conglomerates, for the change of living conditions.
We are a center of excellence and knowledge base, and the most important contribution we make to the world is gathering that evidence and that knowledge and spreading it so that people can act in accordance with it. So that all the knowledge that we now have about the risks to children coming from the environment can be focused and used to stimulate action. People who are sick are not going to contribute. So it's not only in human and human rights and humanitarian terms, but also in economic terms, it makes a lot of sense to invest in health, which means invest in a better environment as well.